Make sure you have watched or have the knowledge in my Essential Tools and Concept module, especially my Essential Tools video. So I'm going to assume that everyone that watches this have already seen that video. If you are someone who doesn't like to blend and prefer to just shade accurately without blending and have that very strong charcoal texture, obviously this video doesn't apply much to you. I still recommend that you watch this at least once so you have a better understanding of how charcoal behaves in general. Also, you may accidentally smudge your drawing and end up in somewhat of a blending territory anyway. Alright, if you are using vine or willow charcoal, there's a small difference between the two, but compared with compressed charcoal, they might as well be on the same level, same thing. The gentlest touch, like I'm not using any force at all. With anything, and the charcoal you put down is going to move around and blend. So whatever tools you use, soft blending stump, tissue paper, cotton swab, your fingers, how much it blends or how well it blends is going to be pretty similar. So if you are working with these charcoals and you want to blend, it's less about what tools you use to blend, but the contact size of the tool with the paper. So you have control with how much to blend in terms of area that you want to blend. This is what it looks like if you blend with one of those hard store-bought blending stumps. And this is what blend looks like if you're using a blending stump. Right? I'll apply a little bit more pressure. You see, they look very similar, honestly. I can do the same thing again with a third blending tool, which is just my finger. Two primary things to note about this charcoal. After you blend it, even before, but it's definitely after, it's not going to be as dark as compressed charcoal. No matter how dark I put it down like this, it looks pretty dark. I'll increase the area so you can see it a little bit better. Watch next to my charcoal pencil with compressed charcoal. You see there is a very notable difference. So the dynamic range, even at the level that you don't blend, the darkest you can get is slightly less than compressed charcoal as one of its characteristics. The second one is that after blending, see, I'm blending both. Look at the difference now. Due to how soft it is, you're going to move the charcoal powder like basically extremely thin all over the place, that it's just not going to be dark. It doesn't stick to each other and doesn't stick to the paper nearly as well. But that's one of its benefits too. As you can see, it is softest and the most malleable charcoal media. So you can go pretty dark and you can go soft to dark and you can go super soft. So it's very, very malleable, but this is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it allows you to really manipulate the charcoal, especially creating low to mid gradients. And it is also very easy to work in layers. You can put more charcoal on it because the paper retains its tooth and how much it grabs onto the media. So I can actually use any other pencil or compressed charcoal and I can draw on top of it and it will work perfectly fine. This does not obviously apply to graphite. We know how graphite is very hard to work on top of graphite due to it makes the paper super slippery and shiny. And I mentioned it's a double-edged sword. So because of the nature that is so easy to blend, it's also very easy to mess up. So if you spend time to draw something, maybe you take a while and then you accidentally touches it with the smallest amount of force. Like barely any force, and it's gonna screw up the entire drawing. So to use this type of charcoal well, you need to be extremely careful and pretty much immediately use spray fix once the entire drawing is done. Okay, now we're gonna focus on my bread and butter, the compressed charcoal. It comes in the form of a pencil or a block. And compressed charcoal, there's no really right or wrong way to blend, but different tools have different effect. At the end of the day, play around with these methods of blending, and through understanding and experience, you'll get better at it intuitively instead of always having to memorizing any rigid formula. Okay, 3 of the most common ways I blend depending on what I'm doing, and I'm going to use this box again. 1, 2, 3, right? And let's put some charcoal in there. And we'll do it with similar amount, and you can just see the difference. This one I will blend with the most common way that I blend, which is my soft blending stump. In the previous module, you can find the video for how to make this yourself. And I'm just gonna, you can just see the effect. This one spreads the charcoal really well. And you can put more pressure, and it still remains fairly dark. The second one is something like tissue paper or cotton swab. Those are kind of similar. And it blinds not this well, but, and it's gonna be lighter than this. Watch. Notice the difference? I'm using the same amount of pressure for both. This one takes away a lot of the charcoal onto the paper. So just look at the difference between those two of blending. And the third way of blending is sometimes a method that certain teachers or institutions tell you to not to do, but honestly, I'll tell you why, is to blend with your finger. And it's gonna look like something like this. It looks very similar to number one, but it's actually different, okay? I will do another version and you will see the difference, why it's different. It's actually the darkest. So, why do people say not to blend with your finger? Honestly, it's because we have oil on our hand. If you touch the paper too much, you can make the paper a little bit yellowish in the place where you touch it. If you have too much oil on your hand, if you wash your hand before the drawings, you can totally blend with your hand and your fingers. I have had drawings that literally decades old that I blended with my finger, and there's nothing wrong with the paper or anything, especially after you use spray fix. That's it, really, these three. You just have to play around with it and understand it, and you can just see the effect. Now, I want to talk more about the difference between number one, which is blending stump, and number three, which is my finger. There's actually a big difference between the two, and in order for you to see it, I need to use an even softer but still compressed charcoal. Ready? I'm gonna make two small boxes down here so you can see. This is much softer, but it's still compressed charcoal, which means it can get really dark. Now, because I'm using the softer compressed charcoal, there's gonna be a much more noticeable difference between the two. I'm blending this one with my homemade blending stump, and this one, I'm gonna blend with my finger, okay? Watch the tone value difference. It doesn't blend as much, but it does blend. And look at the value difference now. When you use your finger, you blend the charcoal, but since your finger is so rubbery, right? It pushes charcoal down into the paper a lot more. So, and less charcoal, because your finger is so rubbery, it takes away less charcoal on you. I know it looks dirty, but this takes away a lot more charcoal. And it sprays the charcoal more as well. It doesn't allow the charcoal to be pushed into the paper as much. To summarize, vine and willow charcoal blends very easily no matter what tools you use. The result is similar. Soft compressed charcoal. Blending stump. Tissue paper. Finger. Okay, those three are of similar consistency right now. Blending stump, it brings it to about a 90. Regardless of how many times I add charcoal, you tend to spread it around to about 90. Tissue, it's gonna, if you use a lot of pressure, look, it's gonna create a much lesser value. And lastly, the finger, you press in charcoal into the paper as you spread them around, allowing you to create darker value. They also react to eraser differently, and I will only erase left half of each box with a kneaded eraser. So you can see the difference of how much value it takes off. See how they react to eraser differently. I bet you didn't think the finger one would actually be more susceptible to eraser. This paper is art paper but smooth version. Again, for you, just play around. So at the end of the day, these are what applies with my particular setup. Ideally, you don't follow any rigid rules yourself, but through understanding, use any method that works best for you. Because ultimately all we're doing is moving charcoal powder around on paper to achieve the tone value and consistency we desire at the correct level based on my tone value module. Okay, on to the next video.